Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis podcast episode 89. I'm Steve Smith, along with Natalia Sorokin. Natalia, lifetime in tennis. She's been a guest on our podcast. She's been a player, parent now, and a coach. She's certainly able to help us with questions. Looking forward to having you. Thanks for being here, Natalia.
Thank you, Coach Steve, for having me.
We're going to interview Kim Wittenberg. Conversation with Kim. I've known Kim for 44 years. I may have to remind him it's a one-on-one. With Natalia here, two-on-one conversation. Kim Unplugged, that's what we really should have. Just tell us like it is. With his wife, Jennifer, they're retiring. They're moving to Italy in just a matter of days. Kim, I believe, is the same age as I am, maybe a little younger. We'll find that out. Lifetime in tennis family. Both his brothers are coaches. I've never met Chris, but I've spent a lot of time with Scott. Call Scott Youngwin. They're from California. They grew up in San Bernardino, so that's where Redlands University is. So Kim certainly is very familiar with the late Jim Verdick and everything he stood for. Kim and I met when we were working for All American Sports in Deerfield Academy, Deerfield, Massachusetts, late 70s. Name of the company's come up with previous podcasts, Chuck Creasy, Carlos Goffey. A lot of people had their start with All American Sports back in the 70s. Nick Bollettieri used to teach the adults and Harry Hopman and the juniors at the same time. It's interesting, staying in touch. The years go by, but when you know someone as well as Kim, it just takes you a minute to catch up. But it'll be very informative, very insightful to listen to what he has to say. As an American, he spent a lot of time in Europe teaching tennis, but he certainly knows quite a bit about the American market. And let's give him a call. I hope we can give him a call.
Hey.
Kim Wittenberg.
Hey,
Natalia.
Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, good to hear you.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, Natalia. Nice to hear your voice too. Hey, I wanted to say something before we even get started. I wanted to thank Steve for his 40 plus years of service, and I do not know a better coach anywhere in the world.
Well,
and unfortunately, Vic has passed, and there isn't anyone else in the world, and you should for sure be the director of the USGA High Performance or whatever. But that's another story.
Well, I appreciate saying that. I mentioned that we met 44 years ago at Deerfield Academy, a place that I had played ice hockey as a kid. A beautiful place.
Wonderful.
With there's so many things we could talk about, but let's start backwards. Usually we start at the beginning. But tell us, you and your wife, Jennifer, you're moving to Italy. Tell us about that.
We're moving to Italy Monday, and they're terribly excited, although it's sort of a new thing. But the fact that I spent so much time in Europe, it's not for me, but we've been to Europe many times, and she's fortunately all in, or it would have been a no-go. And we're terribly excited about the future. And instead of fearing it, we're excited about it. And, it's tough everywhere, but we have family. My 3 kids and grandchildren and their families are all in Europe. So my 2 brothers are in Europe. Do you know my brother, Chris?
I said in the intro, there's so many other things that we can touch upon, but no, I never met Chris. I was in Atlanta. We were supposed to meet. I was teaching some tennis teachers, and he was going to come. This is years ago, but I certainly spent a lot of time with a young one, Scott.
Right, you spent a lot of time with Scott, and Scott actually is in the process of getting a place where we have our house in Italy, and we're really excited about that. And we're going to spend a lot of time riding around on moped. No, I'm teasing. We're not getting on it.
But Youngwood's he's not retiring. He just bought a property.
No, he's just going to. Scott said that he wanted a place like that because now on his vacations, he ends up working all the time, which is in reality what I've done all my life because my adult life, because in the vacation time, I always had tennis camp. So, yeah. So now he's going to have time off.
Well, I appreciate you speaking to us because you're right down to the wire moving. But I've got this down: stressful moving, marriage, divorce, changing jobs, and having a baby. Some people, of course, the women are the ones that have the baby, but they'll do 2 or 3 of those at the same time.
And retiring.
In retiring, tell us about retiring. That's Jennifer.
Retiring is also terribly stressful because there are a lot of things you have to go through, a lot of things you have to work out, and saying goodbye to at least part of your career and stuff, and it's the question is, when do you do it? And I didn't want to do it when I was 80 or 85 when there's not a lot of time left to enjoy life. So we're at a point where we can do everything and plan on doing everything. So,
and how old are you now, Kim? I'm 67.
I'm 67. Same great year.
So you're a couple of years late. You're supposed to retire at 65, right?
Right, but you know how Social Security works. Right. I'm teasing. No, it was just time, and it just worked out well for us, and our grandkids are little, and we want to be able to enjoy them, and also the rest of the family. And too many people don't, and they wait too long, or they never do, or they can't, and yeah, that's not a good thing.
No, that's great. I tease Mark Anthony Costello, the MAC retirement program, young guy. He's my age, but I think of him as a young guy. I've known him since I was 9 years old. His retirement plan is just to work until you die.
Yeah, of course, Steve, you too.
It's, some people tell me that I'm going to die on a tennis court, so I need to come and join you two. I need to.
We plan on having you eat our pasta.
It sounds like the prices are right as far as buying homes over there, correct?
Yeah, right. But we don't want to tell people that. So let's talk about something else.
Keep it a secret.
Keep it a secret. Let them go to Cancun.
Jumping around, I remember I was supposed to go to Europe with you and Mark Hamlin, but I had a clause in my contract if Tyler Junior College was going to allow me to set up this tennis tech program, and that became a reality. So I didn't go to Germany when the two of you went, but I went and worked many years in Germany and other parts of Europe. But I always was envious because I would go for 3 or 4 weeks and have a translator. But how many years were you in Germany?
I was in Germany from 81 or 82 to 2004. 23 years. My kids grew up there, went to school there. It was great because as a coach and taking kids to tournaments, you get to know a place often better than the people that are from there. And I spend more time traveling all over Germany than most Germans do. So it's really a second home. I have missed it a great deal. It's a great place. Europe altogether is a great place, and we hope that it becomes peaceful again. And that stops. But Europe is just a wonderful place, and in a lot of ways, they're way ahead of where we are in America. People they figured things out 50, 60, 70 years ago, or right after the war. And, the healthcare issue, the education, and those are some of the reasons why people are so far ahead. Well, my kid all went to college in Europe, all have graduate degrees. One has a doctorate, and they have no student debt. And America, is right now all skewed to the wealthy. Don't buy a Tesla.
With bring Natalia into the conversation. She's 4 kids. One now is a runner, but the other 3 are playing tennis. Actually, one is, I would say, more of a swimmer, but he's only 10. But he hits the ball quite well. Let's talk a little bit about European tennis. Bring Natalia in to ask some questions. You're trying to go this summer?
Yes. I'm planning, depending on situation. It's unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with visas and such. With the red clay, tell us a little bit of why you think there's so many players from Europe now and not so many from America.
Well, I think a lot of it comes from the way tennis is being taught today. I mean, clay is a fantastic surface. I think a lot of what's being done today is overrated, though, as far as clay goes. I know the secret to Spanish tennis. I'm not sure. I'm sure you probably do too, Steve. But should we tell the world what the secret to Spanish tennis is?
No, please do. I went through the program 3 different times.
Right.
But go ahead. What is it?
The secret to Spanish tennis is not teaching at all. It's the fact that they have had almost an unlimited number of future events, and the kids in Spain could travel almost for nothing all over the country throughout the entire year and play at a really, really low rate. They had more future events than anywhere in the world, all in one country. They could literally ride a bus and go from cousin to cousin and play several weeks in the same place. And that's had a lot to do with it. The fact that then the USTA hired Spanish coaches, some of which were very good, but they're only teaching certain things, is really made had a real negative effect on American tennis and tennis in general. You look at kids should have a game. My model for kids for a game is Todd Martin. Huge ground strokes, Eastern grips, great volleys, can play serve and volley, can play doubles, just an absolute super all-arounder. And the wraparound swings don't help you getting to the net. So anyway, coming back to clay, it's a fantastic surface. I'm getting off the track, but developing on clay is really overrated. I give Andy Murray a lot of credit. He spent a lot of time on clay, but he spent a lot of time indoors in England also, and people don't talk about that. Why can he volley? He doesn't come in that much, but he can. He's actually also a great all-arounder. He spends too much time who doesn't spend too much time on the baseline today? Let's talk about Isner and Opelka. But anyway,
yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, no, Welby Van Horn used to bring up Todd Martin's name as a model student, someone who, of course, he had size, but no, he could. Sure. He was a very complete player, and also he was a late bloomer in the sense that he went to Northwestern and
right.
Wasn't a teenage sensation. Go ahead, Natalia. Question.
I have a question. Yeah, back in the day, Czechs they were the best tennis school. One of the best in the world, like from
the Czech,
the Czech Republic, like from technical standpoint, from physical, from everything. So, what do you think about this these days?
I think that there are a lot of great Czech players. I was a huge Ivan Lendl fan. I even won $100 from him playing pool once. But Petra Korda was Czech too, correct?
Yeah.
Fantastic technique, and I'm not sure, but I think indirectly Vic had something to do with their system or coaching. Is that true, Steve, or no?
Actually, I went there in 1987. Vic, when his first book came out in 77, I think certainly he influenced tennis around the world. Insiders were, look past Vic, the comedian. In fact, I was talking to someone from Argentina the other day where Vic was in Argentina and he worked with Vilas's coach. And, I think Tracy Austin's brother, Jeff, that was the connection for them to play the Orange Bowl. But I think, coming back to like, say, money, capitalism's not perfect. The UTR was based off the French system. And now, I mean, we take kids to UTR tournament almost every week, and they're charging the same amount for almost the same amount for doubles as they are for singles. And it was put together, and Dave Fish was really instrumental. Dave Howell started it. He was the man behind the scenes, and but Fish, he was upset that it didn't go genderless, ageless, and it went where it became very, very expensive. So, but I do think that Natalia's question is that the Czechs very complete as far as kids playing different sports.
Very, very good athletes, great players, and Natalia, I would agree with you as far as the players in the Lendl era and stuff, just fantastic. I'm like I said, I'm not exactly sure where the technique development came from, but I agree with you, and they were just absolutely fantastic.
I think you can look at Sebastian Korda. We talk about so many little things. Matt Clore, who we spent a lot of time with, he actually saw the father giving the son lessons, just slow mini tennis, really emphasizing having long follow throughs. Actually, I read where when he was younger and he was playing ice hockey to become a complete athlete, his parents only let him play girls at voluntaries. All the teenage boys can be
crazy. They work harder.
Be crazy, and
they're smarter, and they should also be the president.
Actually,
Yes.
we have a film called The Late Bloomer where Orlin Stanojcev, a Bulgarian we worked with, who transformed his game at age 19, and he played Gefelnikov. He lost in 5 sets on Arthur Ashe, but he changed the game at 19, and then the Germans had the Grand Slam Cup. It had the largest purse at one time, and Peter Korda, he hired Orlin as a sparring partner. I would like to think that had something to do with it. Actually, some former students have asked Sebastian's father, Peter, about that, and Peter Korda says, "I know the boy." That's pretty much all he says.
Right.
Is I know the boy.
Right.
But, he certainly was a hitting partner, and he's somebody who, did a very good job, making a lot of changes in his game. But I think the history, you go back to 54, Drobny won Wimbledon, and by that time he had defected to Egypt. But one thing under Soviet regime, the Iron Curtain, tennis was not suppressed in Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, or Czechoslovakia. But all the places I've been, they used to take kids out on the field, and they would take 2 ping pong paddles, cut off the handles, tape the two ping pong paddles, one to the front side of the palm, one to the knuckles, and they definitely would recruit. They would look for the kids that have the most coordination, and then teach those. Here in the West, I think too many times, we've catered to the wealthy, and I think that was one of the negatives with the Soviet system. We talked about that with Natalia in a previous podcast. Is catered to the talented, and catering to the talented doesn't really allow for late maturity and a second chance. But
Sure.
I think the kid from Central Europe, they're going to learn to ski, they're going to learn to skate. I mean, if people were to just study Navratilova at the famous tennis club in Prague, Sparta Club, they just had one indoor court, and kids would just hit against the backboard all winter long.
Sure.
And,
Sure. Sure.
Also, too, is that the Czechs, they used to stay on the road so long. They had cultural toughness. They were very capable of staying on the road a long time.
Sure.
with
Sure. There's I can't remember his name, Steve. Maybe you remember. There's a former top player from the 60s and early 70s that has been a Davis Cup coach, I think, of the Czech Republic on and off for many years. Is normally in Germany. I can't remember.
Jan Kovic?
Yeah, no, not Jan Koder, someone else.
Nicky Pilic?
Yes, Nicky Pilic.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Nicky's from the former Yugoslavia. In fact, with
Okay.
the Russians. I think most people disagree with Wimbledon's not allowing the Russians to play this year.
Right.
And in '73, there was a boycott at Wimbledon because Nicky Pilic refused to play Davis Cup. But
He taught Djokovic, right?
yeah, he taught Djokovic. He taught a number of top 10 players, and he actually has been the Davis Cup captain of 3 different countries: Serbia, Serbia, Croatia, and Germany. If people were to read about Nicky Pilic, the players say they never got to sit down, they never got to drink water, and they just worked so hard.
Right.
Yeah, but
Well, yeah, it's hard to get American kids to work today.
tell us about that. A mutual friend of ours, Paul Mcdonald, I've talked to him, and he said that something for you that you mentioned in retiring. It's like, gee, sometimes you're just, you're spitting in the wind with trying to teach some young kids today.
Well, they have too many options, and the average kid today is they're doing too many things, and their parents think it's a good thing, and they're actually outside of school. They're doing 5, 6, 7 things, and tennis ends up being an activity, and they never really they play the violin, they go to Boy Scouts, they run cross country, they do karate. And how's your backhand? How are your grips? What's your strategy? And that's really changed. It used to be that a kid would kind of fall in love with a sport and they'd work at it and they'd get good at it and that's what they did. And that's 1 out of 100 today. There are too many options here. The kids are too soft. There's too much discussion with the parents. Parents are too involved. Find a good coach. Let them teach. Let your kid learn. Make them work hard. Kids don't know what working hard is.
That's like the movie A League of Your Own with Madonna and Tom Hanks, where Tom Hanks said there's no crying in baseball, but where the line is the kid says, "I'm taking baseball," and the comeback is, "No one takes baseball. You play baseball." But people, yeah, you're right. They're taking gymnastics. They're doing a lot of things once a week, and sometimes they just don't sink their teeth into one. I think on the other hand, they're not playing multiple number of sports. There's no backyard sandlot pickup sports anymore.
And then on top of it, the level is so low. I had some 12-year-olds this year that came to me 6 months ago as total beginners. Their parents saying, "Oh, could I help them? Could I coach them so that they could make the team?" Well, the kid that the mom was talking about was district champion. That's how the kid not only made the team, but he won the school district. And that isn't just because of the coaching. It's because the level was so bad, because all the other kids were like that too, except that they didn't have a coach. Most of the kids that came out for tennis had never played before. So
I think our listeners, the game-based approach is front and center. Form-based is out the window. And game-based is, it's about making money. Let's make it fun. Let the kids play.
Terrible.
Also, liability, like in Europe, the kids, they travel with coaches. Parents are not involved unless they're coaches.
Right. And Natalia, you're exactly right, and they should not be.
Yeah. And here you have like the parents, they go to the tennis tournaments, and it's all liability, it's all money. So it's very tough. It's different.
Yeah, it's very tough, and that's why American tennis is where it is today. We have a bunch of giant players that are playing on the baseline. That, it's really sad to watch. And having beaten Isner, as a coach, defeated Isner on a clay court with a aggressive attacking player. I mean, if these guys would go to the net, they would clean up, as Jennifer just said, right?
Yeah,
So
it's hard to imagine Riley Opelka as well. They're serving out of a tree, and there's so few serve volleyers. But now in junior tennis, a kid can play seriously 3-4 years, singles and doubles, and never venture to the net.
Sure. Well,
Go ahead.
I always spend time, even in the very beginning, at the net, and I would work on volleys with beginners right off the bat, so that they weren't afraid, so they were familiar with it, and I think that's kind of the way to go. But the problem is here, it's really hard to find kids that work hard, that are interested in getting better, that aren't too busy with other things. So,
tell us about your setup when you first went. I guess going over to work for Vic Braden, and then the All California Tennis Camp. That was a great name, great logo. Did you have that logo, the elephant? Because elephants never forget. How'd you come up with that logo?
No, they just keep trotting along, and. I don't really remember even who came up with the elephant. It was just
Elephant in California.
It was neat, and we were in the same place for a long time. It was very good. We had access to on and off about 10 red clay courts, 4 indoor courts, additional indoor courts in the area. The neat thing about Germany is there's probably no place in the world that has as many indoor courts. Every little village has a tennis club with indoor courts or a commercial center. Tennis is relatively inexpensive to play. Coaching is less expensive. And, so there's opportunity. But some of my brother Scott talks now about some of the same things I talk about with kids doing too many things, or the parents don't want to, they don't want to drive their kids to tournaments and stuff. And, that's the kind of thing that things like the USTA should invest in, helping kids get to tournaments or providing other ways for them to do it, or make the entry fees income based. So if your parents make a lot of money, you pay, and if they don't, they don't. I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but we need to find a way to get kids back to really playing. So
no, I think tournaments are business. I do think that. I remember the late Bobby Curtis calling me up. I was in charge of a club that had 3 tournaments, and he asked if I would drop one. I said I'll drop all 3. I really think coaches should coach, and I think a lot of coaches want to run tournaments on the weekend because they sit in the air conditioning and make more money. But I think there's been definitely too much of a money grab in American tennis. The team situation too, playing club tennis is a big plus. And then actually seeing the clubs, they take pride in having a very good team, and then the members, they come out, they watch, and the younger players in Germany.
Oh yeah,
other parts, yeah.
Germany, France, the Czech Republic, they do that. They do that in a lot of countries. That's just a fantastic environment, and it allows kids to develop doing that, and also play very inexpensively. And I mean, Germany's done a really, really good job with that. But the coaching system, I think, is also good, but they have this, the program where they get kids into the program and they kind of ignore everybody else. It's that needs some revision.
I know Howard Schoenbrunn for years. I mean, he certainly, with the German Tennis Federation, had a great influence from Vic Braden. But you went you went through the training with the Deutsche Tennis Federation?
Yes, in Hamburg. And I met Richard in the training center from the DTB in Hanover many times. My friend Hans Peter Born was the first the girls and the boys national junior coach, and ran tennis, a lot of the tennis teaching program. His son, Philip, who was my student when he was younger, runs the only university program where you can get a university degree in tennis in Cologne at the university. So they're really, really great people. Hans-Peter Born is probably the most knowledgeable German coach that I know. And yeah, it's tough to look back. I know I'm jumping all over, but to look back at German tennis and see Boris Becker and Michael Stich, and then since then nobody's gone to the net. It's kind of hard to follow that.
I know Andy Fitzel is coaching young Henry Squire. His father's an Aussie, but he grew up in Germany. His mother's German, and Andy spent a lot of, maybe 100 days collectively in the USTA national campus here, and now he's spending a lot of time in the national center in Germany. And
right,
I think a lot of places the instruction is just not unified. It's so individualized from one court to the next. There's just no continuity. On this end of it, you went through the USPTA, PTR. Did you do that as well?
I went through the USPTA program, and I really didn't learn a lot there. Most of what I learned from Vic.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned Jim Burdick. You obviously were influenced by Jim
Burdick. Wow. Yeah, in fact, I think we need to talk about leading with the bottom edge. Okay. I'm not sure, but I think I heard that from Coach Burdick on the volley. Always lead with the bottom edge. From the second you turn, you lead with the bottom edge. It's just a great, fantastic tip. Always lead with the bottom edge. But
Roger Federer has said one of the reasons that people fear the net is they fear the low volley. We dedicated a podcast or two to Jim Burdick because he's one of the pillars of the Great Base, and then we interviewed his son. No, our listeners should go back and listen to why he was so successful. I think that he was the John Wooden of college tennis, even though he wasn't coaching one of the elite top schools. He won so many national championships.
We were actually there 2 days ago, and Redlands is a fantastic place, and the facility is fantastic. And I don't know anything about the coaching there now, but Coach Burdick is, if they had practice going on, he'd let you play on the back courts, even if stuff was going on if they were empty. Never ever kicked me off the court.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
They have a tournament in SoCal, Jim Burdick Cup. I think it's a junior team tournament.
They
bring environment, like team environment, and
I think the pandemic slowed down the building process, but they're rebuilding the tennis facility and going to name it after Coach Burdick.
Yeah, I actually didn't stop. I drove by it 2 or 3 times. I was with family, but we drove right by it, and it looked entirely new. So I think they have.
Okay.
And it's a really beautiful small university and fantastic facility, and the city is just magnificent. People drive by on the I-10, and people in Redlands don't want them to stop.
It's kind of like your secret in Italy.
Go to Cancun.
With our podcast, we're trying to carry the torch from tennis teachers from the past, and Vic Braden's one of them. Why do you give us a few thoughts on Vic? I mean, you got to.
Well, okay. I believe firmly in everything Vic teaches. I mean, I can't understand why anyone would teach anything other than an Eastern grip. If you go look at huge forehands, we go back to the Czechs, Ivan Lendl. Ivan Lendl had an Eastern forehand grip. If you ask Bjorn Borg what his grip was, he would say Western, but he actually had an Eastern forehand grip. Would you agree with that, Steve?
No, for sure. What happened was that because the way he led with his elbow, or how his elbow was slightly raised, that people were confused.
And there are a lot of confused people today.
Yeah.
And changing grips on the volley. I have taught that since I learned that from Vic, and I really, really believe in it. And the kids that I've taught that have done really well. Dustin was taught that originally, and he went to modifying his modified continental and changing the base of his palm from there. But you have so many advantages doing things with hitting your forehand with an Eastern grip, being able to chip the ball, being able to drive the ball, being able to hit a lot of top, being able to volley with it. And your later contact point is a huge plus at a real high level because of the speed. The fact that, you're not as likely to wrap it around your neck and end up 15 feet farther from the net. So just ask Andy Roddick how well that worked for him.
I saw Natalia smile. She's got a daughter. What does she maybe weigh? 65 pounds, 70 pounds?
Tiny. She's
not very big, but she has an Eastern forehand grip with Juan Martin Del Potro.
Yes. Steffi Graf.
Steffi Graf. Great story about Pam Shriver talking to the late Jack Kramer. And he said, you want to see someone hit a forehand, watch Juan Martin Del Potro. And the term he uses, he hits it like a sledgehammer. I mean, just can really, can really hit through the court. And I think that's one of the things is there's such a premium on winning early, winning the 2-inch trophy. And Richard Hernandez was a guest in our podcast, and we said, what would be one thing that would improve tennis in Canada? And he said grips.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I recently had a student that said we were talking about volleys and overheads and stuff, and he asked me who the best junior was that I've ever seen in Texas, and I said, I haven't seen one yet. Most of them can't volley. And we coached for a long time in our academy the number 2 boy in the 18s in Texas, who now plays at Texas Tech, and a really great player, but I still don't think he's gone to the net. And he's Reed Collier is his name, a great kid, a great player. Reed's 6'4", maybe going on 6'5", and if Reed could volley and go to the net, he'd just be really scary. The kid that beat him in the state final 3 years ago that he played in, funny enough, was a serve and volley player. So that was his only loss the entire year. Funny how that works.
For our listeners, you mentioned Dustin by first name, but Dustin Brown, you started with him at when he was 7 years old, right?
8, and spent years with him on and off. Was in my camp, gave him private lessons, lived with us, lived in my facility, took him to tournaments all over Germany. And then later on the tour. So, Dustin started off with Eastern grips and changed a little bit, but kept the attacking style and the chip return. He does the chip return probably better than anybody I've seen, except for maybe Edberg. You don't see it too much anymore, unfortunately. What would Jack say about that?
I know he came and stayed at your place when Austin Krychek, who I coached mostly on the front side, mostly when he was really young, but I coached him certainly some in college and then went on the road with him when he was in the pros. And he ended up playing some doubles with Dustin, so did Raven Klaassen. But actually, your brother was with Dustin when he beat Nadal at Wimbledon. That was
right. And I was with Dustin the year before when he beat him in Halle.
Yeah.
And right after 3 days after he won the French Open.
Oh, that was exciting. I was running a camp in Germany with Andy Fitzell at David Squire's club in Dusseldorf, and so Scott Youngwin, as I call him, because you sent your brother to me when he was 18 years old to play tournaments, and
right.
I mean, I think I'm just 5 or 6 years older, but it was pretty exciting because he came to the tournament right after, or excuse me, he came to our camp with his son right after Wimbledon. And that
right.
I think that really jump started Craig O'Shaughnessy's,
Sure.
His getting in front of the camera and being on TV, and he's certainly someone who preaches going to the net, which is great.
Right. Yeah. Dustin does it well, and anybody that gets to that level, if they do it, they would be way more successful, and everything speaks for it. Nothing speaks for being on the baseline. What is it? 70% of the points, the time a pro gets to the net, they win the point 70% of the time. So where do you want to be? What was it 4 or 5 years ago that Djokovic and Federer had what did they play, the Wimbledon final 5-6 years ago? I'm not exactly sure. And Federer got to the net 64 times and lost by a couple points, but won 70% of the points going to the net. So if he had gone to the net a few more times, it wouldn't have even been close. But we're speaking into a closet.
Federer was asked about, why don't you, and I do think Edberg influenced him to go to the net more. And he said he played his best tennis in 2017 when he started using analytics. But with the Fed, when they changed the grass, 2000, I think it was 2001, and it was David Nalbandian, and Leighton Hewitt. They were in the finals, and there was not one serve and volley point.
Right. But, well, I think that change of the grass is really overrated. I mean, Dustin beat Hewitt on grass at Wimbledon. Dustin beat Nadal when he was also at his peak in Wimbledon. He beat him in Wimbledon and in Halle. It's really overrated. It has more to do with the fact that they're not going in. I mean, do you think if Pete was 25 and was playing Wimbledon, that he'd play baseline tennis and wouldn't be successful? Never. This is another thing about American tennis that really irks me. When do they? Who's talking about Pete? Talk about a great game.
Right.
Everybody should be talking about Pete and Todd Martin, but yeah, the kids don't even know who they are today. Yeah. It's really sad. Really, really sad. Now, Lendl, Ivan, Natalia mentioned the Czech tennis. Ivan was one of the best baseliners of all time. But what did he do at Wimbledon? He played serve and volley. Tony Roach got him to do that.
Right.
And what happened to him? Well, he got to 5 finals. He didn't lose 5 finals. He got to 5 finals. He did lose them, but he got to 5 finals. And he had great grips and just fantastic technique. He was so successful there at Wimbledon because he went in. Actually, it wouldn't have worked if he had stayed back.
Actually, Tony Roach told him, he goes, "You're too greedy and you're too cocky." I mean, because Tony Roach said, "You've won everything. You got more money than you'll ever need. Don't just serve and volley during the tune-ups. Start serving volley.
Mm-hmm.
Start serving volley year round." It baffles me how people want to win Wimbledon and they don't train like they're ever going to play on Wimbledon. Little kids today,
right.
They're not taught grips where they have any chance to play on, like, say, a fast carpet, and they play such one-dimensional tennis. But on the other
Sure.
hand, too, I think a lot of people, unfortunately, that teach tennis, they pretty much have a backyard mentality, and they go to the YouTube clips. And unlike yourself, they haven't seen tennis. They haven't
Don't
seen
even,
tennis all over the world.
Steve, don't even go there. The parents watching YouTube clips is the demise of tennis. Oh, I wish parents would never, until their kid was developed, would never have access to the internet. I mean, I had parents coming out all the time going, "Well, I saw this," or I think Tommy should be doing this. Well, how come? Because some guy in some place in the world was doing that, and well, who is that? I have no idea.
Right.
You know,
Actually, there's a program right now called the Summit, and I know there's three of the speakers are people that we trained, and I would say for the most part, they're all YouTube coaches. They haven't been in the trenches, and they've never taken a beginner from square one,
well,
step one.
Sure. Can I comment on that for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just can't stand people coming out in a parent will go to a coach and they'll ask the coach, well, you know, what's your background? And the coach will say, oh, I was a great player. No, but what's your coaching background? Well, I was a great player. I was 200 in the world. You know, it's like the Raducanu that won the U.S. Open. The week after the U.S. Open, she fires her coach that developed her and spent all this time. And then there are a lot of tour coaches that are going, yeah, she needs to step up and have somebody with her that's been there. Well, what do you mean been there? She was just there. She went through qualifying that no one has ever done and won a slam, and then she dumps her lifetime coach. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? She needs one of these people. I'm sorry, but please, Emma, hire the guy back. Beg him to come back. Whoever he is, he's good.
You could say bozos. I mean, that's a pretty good word. With the clowns, how's it go? Clones taught by clowns. The commentators on TV, they have access to the top players. It's amazing how so many commentators get jobs coaching touring pros. Go ahead, Natalia. What question you have for Kim?
European tennis these days, is it better teaching than American?
I would say definitely, except for maybe a handful of coaches in America. Absolutely. Yes. Look at the success in the men. Look at the Italian guys now. You know, the French have been successful the last 20 years. They have had a real good program. Definitely better. Absolutely, definitely better. The coaches are more qualified, have more education, are more involved in their fewer plumbers and electricians that are teaching tennis in Europe than there are in America.
I do think that the coaches in Europe, they stay more connected to the ball hopper instead of getting into the. And I understand that, you know, tennis is a business, and I respect people that do wear different hats and they're in different lanes. But I think that a lot of the older coaches in the U.S., they drop the ball hopper and carry the briefcase, and they delegate. They delegate the coaching. I mean, the farmer's got to do the farming. And I think it's the same thing, is that the coach who's been around the game, it's like with Daniel Coyle in his book, The Talent Code, is that, you know, people that are 60 and 70, he's saying those are the people that should be hired.
I really wish, Steve, that someone would wake up at the USTA and hire you.
Yes.
I just shun at the amount that they spend in waste and what comes out of it. What comes out of it, I couldn't really tell you what comes out of it. It's just a cesspool.
Yeah.
And it's it's sad, and it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed in 30, 40 years, and probably never will. Like you said, money corrupts.
Well,
And
it's like the entrepreneur versus someone who's always worked for the corporation. A lot of great things start in the garage, and you
Tiger Woods.
you got to build your own. I mean, it's
Sure.
you got to pound nails. If you don't pound nails, you can't pound nails. You can't pretend you're a carpenter. You can't pretend that you're a craftsman. And I think that's when you talk about the people that just rely totally on their playing background. Of course, the USTA has done so much of that, where they hire former players, and that just makes us the credibility business. And I say it over and over again: the credibility. You're believable, but that doesn't mean you're truthful.
Going back to Raducanu, I can see like there are a lot of good junior British players. Like Raducanu, there are a couple of guys, like obviously Murray family. Evans. So British tennis is going up these days. What's the reason for that?
I think in general, the federation system in Europe is better than what we have here. But I think though that the coaching is better. The coaching is simply better. And, there's the farther you go east in Europe, the more motivated they are by economics. Tennis gives one a lot of opportunity to travel, to get out, and if you get good, a fortune. But I think coaches are considerably better in Europe. And I mean, look, how can a country like Norway's doing well? Sweden has good players. Finland had a top 10 player for quite a while. Until how long did he retire? The left-handed guy, Steve.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. How can they have a top 10 player? Denmark has had players. Caroline Wozniacki. Germany, of course, has had countless players. Look at Italy now. France has had great players for a long time. Spain too, but Spain has that. If you go back and look 10, 15 years ago at the amount of tournaments there, you'd just be shocked. There were 40 plus ITF futures in Spain. So much of the year the kids could play for almost nothing. What do you have to do in America to do that? They might have a couple in Florida, and then you're going to Oregon or somewhere else. You can't stay with your cousin if you're doing that.
Yeah. Well, I do think you hear this all the time, that we don't have the athletes are not playing tennis in the U.S., and I think that's problematic. I don't think that we're treating kids in tennis like athletes. I know Natalia does a great job, taking kids to the track and making them run, and interval training, and this, that, and the other thing is that the kids. I'm shocked. We have so many kids come and visit, and they may have fantastic fitness trainers, but I always say you need to fire your fitness trainer, because the kids, I mean, they're just barely breaking 8 minutes in a mile, and
right.
And they work with a fitness trainer twice a week. But it's what you do on the own. The fitness trainer should be doing measurements and saying, here's the program. This is what you need to do, and you need to do
fit. You can do push-up.
Push-up, yeah. With
sure, but it comes still. How did Vic describe the player that moved great that had crummy strokes?
Happy loser.
A happy loser.
Yeah.
Right, a happy loser. And I was talking to my wife on the way over here, and I told her all the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours I spent with Dustin. I said, every single time I worked on technique, every single time we worked on, and I never, ever worked on footwork with him. Ever. Okay. So Dustin moved well. Dustin did well. There were other issues, but if you don't have strokes, you can move like a ballerina or Fred Astaire, and it's still not going to help you.
Actually, Mark Walpole, a British coach who's been in California for a long time, he said that, if you're teaching people to hit the ball deep, you're teaching strategy. I mean, you're teaching footwork. It's the whole package. It's not like
Sure.
It's not like someone's a footwork specialist.
Well, I think there are too many coaches today that work on footwork because they don't know how to work on strokes. And I'm just being flat out honest. They spend lots of time doing footwork drills and this and that. And I just commented about some top coach on Facebook. I commented on their drill, running to the backhand corner, hitting forehand, and they wrote back that it was about spacing. And I said to my wife, spacing what? You're giving your opponent space by doing that. And they replied that some players just can't learn a backhand. And then I wrote back, well, maybe you need to work on technique. And this went back and forth, but it's working on footwork is a great thing if they're technically really, really good. If they're not technically good, you better work on their strokes.
Yeah, Mark Walpole said that for the parents, okay, you come for the coach, ask the coach what do they teach. And if they don't talk about grips and swings on the lessons, so go find another coach.
Really good, very, very good comment. That's excellent, and I believe that completely. Sure, my wife wants to comment.
Hi. I think that most parents don't know the questions to ask the coach, and that's something that Kim and I have talked a lot about. If they get over enamored by somebody who says that they played on the tour or whatever, they were 200 in the world, but they don't know the right questions to ask a coach. And I think that would be really important for a really good coach to be able to tell their students and their students' parents, here's what you look for when you're interviewing a coach.
Well, that's really true. But how many times have we had, Steve, how many players have you had that, you worked so hard developing their swings, they fire you, I don't know how many hundreds of 12-year-olds have fired me. and then they go somewhere else and you see them a few months later and they're wrapping it around the neck, grabbing it with the other hand and running to the bench. And you're going, what did I do? Didn't they learn anything? Didn't they learn it? What don't they value what I taught them? I guess not.
Well, to go back to Jennifer's said, the consumer doesn't have consumer knowledge in junior tennis. Mm-hmm. And many, many times the pro doesn't have product knowledge. So the parent's just blindly writing checks. So if there is such a thing as product knowledge, that means there's a product. So you should have an efficient serve. It should look like, hey, that kid can serve, that kid can volley. But actually, I spend very little time, very few skills for social media, but we have been posting for over a decade on Facebook. And Tom Stem, somebody that we trained a long time ago, he told me that he was on, I guess they call it a chat session, coaches chatting, and a young player. It was just circumstantial that we put a lot of things on Facebook. A young kid by the name of Victor Lilov. So there was a short video I put up, and these coaches were all just saying this is the worst thing since sliced bread. And then Tom Stem just typed in, he goes, that kid just won the Orange Bowl. And then everybody deleted their comments and end of argument. But I think that's unfortunate. We always say that people don't listen to science, logic, or even imagery. They just want to know who wins. And I like the German word Kreismeister. Most people, their circle is just so small. They just don't have exposure. Talking about exposure, let me transition to this. This is a fun part of the connection with Kim and myself. So I meet Kim on the East Coast, and we're at a camp in New England. But this is way back before you didn't stay in touch because there was no cell phones, there was no Facebook.
Right. And it costs money. It costs money.
It costs a lot.
No WhatsApp.
Right. So I'm driving the van that you were very familiar with, the one that looked like a tennis ball with white stripes down the middle.
Right.
And I
Right.
look in my rear view mirror, and there's an MG. The driver's just pounding the horn. I was on Pacific Coast Highway, and that's how you and I reconnected out in Southern Cal. And
Right.
and that's when it was amazing. Some of our listeners wouldn't know who John Wayne is, but you were the pro at the John Wayne Tennis Club.
Sure.
John Wayne was so big. I can remember when he passed away. Someone who you mentioned earlier, Mark Hamlin, guy by the name of Tom.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a restaurant pub in West Hampton, New York, when John Wayne passed away. But tell the listeners a little bit about that place. I've got a few notes on that place.
A great club. I believe 17 courts. Very, very close to the beach in Newport Beach. Very wealthy. A lot of real good players. A lot of recreation players. At that time, there was no academy. Everything was private lessons.
No homeschool either.
No homeschool, which is maybe that's our next topic. That's a pet peeve of mine. I don't think anybody should be doing homeschool. As Todd Martin didn't do homeschool. Anyway.
No, but talk about John Wayne. I remember they had the rating system 1 through 10, and I mean,
yes, they had
go ahead.
They had a practice court that was slanted on the other side with a machine that the balls would run into, so they'd come back. They'd put the balls into a ball machine, and you didn't even have to pick them up. It was a great facility. They had a touring pro, a guy named Jerry Van Ling, who I believe Jerry was 200 or 300 in the world. It's a real good guy. I'm not sure why they had a touring pro though. A neat place. Didn't really learn a lot there. I did get to coach Ruben Perchek a little bit before you did, Steve. That was a good thing out of that. Kudos to Ruben. Great guy, great college player. Met a lot of interesting people, but it wasn't a real learning environment.
They actually had a video on every court, and you could see the court, the front desk attendants, but then also people in the lobby. You could see who's playing on every court. And the person, this is one of the toughest jobs in tennis, the person at the front desk, they found everyone a game. I remember you and I were rated as 9s, but some of the 10s were, I've got some names written down: Bob Lutz, Rod Laver, Stan Smith, Tracy Austin.
Oh, sure.
Billie Jean King, Roy Emerson, Ilie Nastase, Vijay Armitage.
Roy Emerson was at the club almost every day. Yeah. Roy taught at the club. While I was there, he worked with Ilie Nastase for 3 weeks. He worked with Billie Jean King for about a month. He worked with Tracy Austin at that time. There were a lot of really, really good players that came through there, and Billie was still a top 10 player at that time. I think she was about 10. Tracy Austin was one of the best players in the world.
No, the Aussies were there. Phil Dent, Ross Case, Jeff Masters.
Fitzgerald, Don Fitzgerald, yes.
Yeah, I remember, through you, I got to know Roy Emerson, and then I can remember Billie Jean yelling at you and me for watching the lesson, and Roy said to her, this lesson's over if you don't apologize to Kim and Steve. So she comes over, and former #1 player in the world. I saw her play at Wimbledon. She was a fantastic tennis player. I mean, the way she played from the service line in, Chris Everett has been quoted saying when she came on the scene, nobody had ground strokes. But the way Billie Jean King played, doubles going forward and played from the service line in was amazing. But I saw Roy Emerson and Anthony, his son.
Yes. Who's passed away, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's too bad. Young age. Ross Case and Jeff Masters had won Wimbledon. And they come back, and the father-son beat him. I mean, it was just one set. Roy was having some fun doing a little trash talk.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Anthony was played for USC at that time. Yeah.
For our listeners, Ruben Perchek. So I met him through Kim, and then next thing you know, he was at Coda de Casa, was just up the street from Newport Beach. And then Vic Braden, Ruben and his mother came to spend the summer, and I got in a little trouble with Vic's wife because Vic would go walk his 2 dogs, and he stayed with us like every night for like 2 hours, helping Ruben. And Ruben really could have gone much further, but he actually decided very quickly, very early on. I mean, he was good enough to make the Davis Cup team in Columbia, but he decided early on. I mean, now I know he has his PhD. He was on a Stanford staff, so he's very accomplished. But he didn't stay with it that long. But I remember learning so much from that experience. That's where Vic Braden, the man, versus Vic Braden, the resource. I was saying that last week. Is Vic taught the grip on the right side of one. As long as somebody really turns their body and that arm's on the inside, it's going to help them close the racket face. Still also getting the racket low. Because one of the big problems with somebody who has a one-hand backhand is when they have 2 grips. They have one grip for slice and one grip for top. It's much better to just have one grip. Like, say, Edberg and Becker, who shared the Wimbledon title 3 years in a row.
Right. But Ivan also, going back to the Czech players, I think Ivan was continental on all of his backhands, both top spin and slice. Am I correct?
Yeah, he had one grip. One thing that McEnroe did was his grip. He had the same grip as Lendl, but McEnroe's racket face was open. Lendl, if you don't change the grip, you have to change the wrist. So if people go back and look at film of Lendl,
right, absolutely,
he had the racket, he had the wrist turned down. Bill Jacobson had the stats where Lendl was very, very effective when he went to the net, but he was just so stubborn, and his idea was just to break the legs down of his opponent. But go ahead, Natalia. I give a shout out.
A lot of great names, great players. So what's your history like? How long have you been spent?
I'm sorry, Natalia, please repeat that. I couldn't hear that last part.
Yeah, we're talking like a lot of great players, great coaches. So what's the story? Like, how long have you spent in California and Europe? What's the story? What's the connection?
What's my story?
Yes. How did you get from California to Europe?
I got to Europe. I was offered a job by the Vic Braden Tennis College in Germany, and I went to work in Germany for Vic. And I worked in several different places. I worked in Goslar. I worked in an island of Sylt, which is in the north of Germany. I worked in Fulda. I worked in Reichenwinkel for Vic. He had 5 or 6 different places in Germany that he had tennis colleges, and I worked in that for a little over a year, and was offered a job by a coach that went through the program in in Sylt, to work with him at a big club in Hamburg. And I jumped at that chance because that was sort of the ticket to staying over there. I didn't know how long the Vic Braden Tennis College I'd be able to work there. So I went to the Harvestehude Hockey and Tennis Club in Hamburg, where I was for 3 years, and then I decided to try my luck and start my own program. And by that time, I had enough German knowledge and stuff to be able to do that.
Did you like Germany right away?
Did I what?
Did you like Germany right away?
Germany?
Yeah, it's different.
It is different, and I tell you what, I liked it a lot more after I learned German. But Germans as a people are very, very well educated, and most Germans speak English. So if they want to, they could speak English, and they tried. The bureaucracy was sometimes a little overwhelming. But I overall, I mean, Germany's really fantastic. And as I said, the more you speak the language and understand the people, the better it is. I'm sure it's the same way anywhere, wherever you go.
Tell us, on a little bit of a tangent, where you were in Hamburg. I've never asked you about this. Tell us about the hockey. What was it? What was it like to be around the
They
hockey?
played field hockey.
Oh, it wasn't ice hockey.
And no, not ice hockey, field hockey.
Okay.
And field hockey is one of the best sports there absolutely is. Field hockey is, and I don't know if you've ever seen it, it's an Olympic sport, incredibly fast. They play it on only on AstroTurf now. At that time, they still played some on natural grass, and they have it in a lot of Europe, professional field hockey. So they have it at the highest level, and the club that I played at the highest level in Germany, and there were players on the men's team that played on the national team. So in other words, they were Olympic athletes, and it's the next best thing to ice hockey, Steve.
I've seen field hockey played overseas in different countries, but I think of badminton. You know, the American idea of badminton is a picnic sport that nobody knows how to play. And
Right.
Same thing with field hockey. They don't want to beat up on the.
But it's Olympic sport.
Yeah, the girls. Typically, it's played in high school, and it's obviously
Fantastic sport.
Yeah, but it's not given the attention that it should be in this country.
No, I think they play it a lot in. Don't they play it in a lot of prep schools and Ivy League schools on the East Coast?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But a fantastic sport, and it was great to see that and become familiar with it. And I mean, we had HTHC was the name of the abbreviation of Harvest Yehuda Hockey and Tennis Club. The coach had been a national level coach and an international player also, but he was a great coach, and it was interesting to spend time with him and see what they do. And the players were real involved, but it was also very social, as is the tennis team thing in Germany, especially outside of the top level. I don't think at the very top in Bundesliga tennis in Germany, they don't spend a lot of time together, but at the lower levels, they have a winter and summer season. They travel all over. They train throughout the year. My niece still plays that, and my sister-in-law in Germany, Scott's wife, and it's just a fantastic thing. So, yeah, handball is also interesting. I'm sure Natalia is very familiar with handball, European handball.
Yeah, it's very popular.
Great sport, a great a tremendous workout. There's a lot involved. It looks chaotic if you're not familiar with it. It's almost not played at all in America, and then it's really, really big. It's a team sport. It's sort of a combination basketball, soccer, and although you don't kick the ball, you dribble it, and it's a fantastic sport.
It's Eastern European countries are very good.
Yes, and they have it also at the professional level. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Steve.
Oh no, but Ash Barty, when she took time off to play cricket, she didn't grow up playing cricket. I mean, she played netball with her sisters. With, Beth Norton back in the 70s, her father created a sport to develop athleticism. I one time thought I was being clever putting two sports together because I had these South African players that weren't very good at basketball. So we're in a gym, and I said, okay, let's play soccer, and then when the ball gets in the lane, then we'll play basketball. So what happened was it became a third sport. It was soccer, and then when the ball was in the lane, it became rugby because everybody dove for the ball.
Okay.
And we used to play that. It was just great. We had some kids they just really couldn't play basketball. So I said, okay, we'll play a combination of soccer and basketball, but actually it became soccer, rugby, and basketball. I think that's one thing too, is that that's different in Europe is that typically when you go to a tennis club, you're going to see other athletes. You know,
Oh, yeah.
you're going to see kids playing soccer, and they actually, that's one thing even about an American kid who's quite good at soccer and they play soccer full time. They can't figure out why. I think I know the answer, but they can't figure out why American kids don't play. They're programmed out. They don't play pickup soccer, and then
Oh, sure.
it's no again coming back to no backyard sports.
Sure. I had kids this year that I coached that they're out of school at let's say 4:00. They might have a lesson. They had a lesson with me at 7, and in between they had two other. They had karate and they had violin or something else, and they're supposed to function and be human beings. Doesn't work.
I did a little homework, and I read this. Just plugging your name in. Physics versus philosophy. Major emphasis on attacking all-court tennis, volley, approach shot, topspin. Let's just go back to that a little bit more. Where that is your philosophy, basically, to go with physics and teach people
right.
how to strike the ball.
Absolutely. Can I go through my little?
Yeah.
My here are my little points. Number one, get the ball in. Okay. Number 2, play high and deep. You have to explain what high is. They don't understand. Their perception of where the ball is or how high the ball should be is skewed because they're watching tennis on TV. They never see good players play, and the balls are 8, 10 feet high. And you watch on TV, the camera's 30 feet high. It looks like it's flat. So the second point is hit the ball high and deep. High and deep meaning 8 to 10 feet high. Okay. Number 3, move your opponent around. Everyone hits the ball at a lower level if they're moving. Everyone. Nobody hits the ball as well running as they do standing. Make John Isner run. He looks like a cowboy with cowboy boots on a horse. Let him stand. He'll hit winners all day. Okay. Number 4, attack the short ball. Always attack the short ball. Okay. They need to learn to hit slice. Why? Because I'm going to get closer to the net. It has nothing to do with how hard you hit the approach shot. If I hit an approach shot 90 miles an hour to Rafa, what's he going to do? He's going to pass me because I'm still 15 to 20 feet from the net. Okay, if I hit slice, it allows me to get halfway between the service line and the net at least. So therefore I'm going to be way more successful. Okay. Learn to chip the return, do different things on the return. Chip the return, drive the return, be aggressive on the return. Okay. Learn to play serve and volley. Steve has been beating this drum for 40 years. Learn to play serve and volley. Why? If I have a huge serve and I stay on the baseline, it's negated as soon as they get the ball back in play. Okay, I have no advantage. I want to use my advantage. John, I still believe that John Isner could win a slam if he'd play serve and volley. If he played serve and volley on every point, nobody could beat him. Nobody could beat him.
You know, we had his college coach John Manny Diaz, and he said that if John, who everybody loves John Isner,
yes,
but if he hit the backhand volley the way Welby Van Horn taught, he'd have millions more in the bank.
Sure, absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. Think about what's going on in the match. Don't just continue to do the same thing. You have to have a plan B. Vic used to talk about the plan B all the time. If you are getting beat at your plan A and you don't have a plan B, you're in trouble. You know, what could Todd Martin do? What could Pete do? You know, Pete was always looking for an opportunity to go forward because he was taught. Yeah, am I wrong to say that Pete was taught by Vic Braden taught coaches?
No, definitely that influence coming from the Jack Kramer Tennis Club for sure.
Sure, absolutely. I don't know who taught Todd Martin. I wish I did. Some great coach in Chicago. I couldn't tell you who.
He's actually from Michigan. I mean, he obviously went to college, and his a coach. I mean, the name's escaping right now, but he actually had a leadership role at the USTA. I should be able to just tell you his name. I've listened to him speak a couple times, but that'll come back to me. We actually with our podcast we're not putting down notes, and I said I'm going to put a team together. Once we've had 100 podcasts, go back and say, okay, we should know this. But yeah, I think for sure. And I think also too, one thing about Todd Martin is he spent a lot of time with the same coach.
Really, really important. Really important. How many coaches, real coaches, did Borg have? Two, to the best of my knowledge.
Percy.
Leonard Berglund, which was his traveling coach, and
he had Percy Roseberg when he was really young.
Percy Roseberg, who's definitely one of the best coaches in the history of the world.
Yeah. His name comes up when you think about people who are they going to stay two-handed or go one-handed, and he changed Edberg, but he didn't change Borg.
Well, I mean, Borg's backhand was scary to be able to create that much pace and top spin and pass on grass and stuff. A lot of people don't know that in the winter he played on fast indoor courts and sometimes in a gym with a wooden floor.
Right.
And I hope my son lives in Stockholm, and I hope to sometime in the next year or two be in Stockholm again. And I know that Percy, I asked a year ago, he was still teaching. And there's a club in Stockholm, I think with 3 courts. I think it's called König's Club, which is the club from the Swedish king. And, or they might only have 2 courts. I'm not sure. Originally it was like that. And he teaches there, or was as of that time. So
I've been to Sweden a few times, but the very first time I went with the idea to just study tennis, and I was in Germany, and I was told that alcohol is very expensive in Sweden. So I took a case of booze to Sweden, and so we go to this club, and Borg was actually practicing. It was a year after he had stopped playing Wimbledon. So we were watching junior tennis, and invited the gentleman who was so gracious, showing us around, and I said, hey, come on out to the car. And I gave him 2 big bottles of booze. And so he invited me back that night, and Borg was with Berglund, and he was during the Wimbledon fortnight, and he was practicing. A lot of people don't know that Mark McCormick, the late Mark McCormick, who started IMG, if, like, say, for example, they just played the Masters. If you win the Masters in golf, you can play that tournament the rest of your life. So Mark McCormick, perhaps a touch of arrogance, he told Borg, we'll get you a wild card. At that time, there was no such thing as a wild card. And then, the all British, Wimbledon said, okay, you have to, Borg had to qualify, and then he didn't want to qualify. So it was just really some mismanagement with, then when you stop playing, I think with Borg not playing, I like the answer when he was in the Wimbledon finals 6 times. He played the French 8, won his 6, lost to Pinata twice. But someone said, well, if you climb Mount Everest 5 times, 5 years in a row, do you really have to climb it the 6th year? Live and let live. But
a question for you. I know you know the answer. Pinata beat Borg twice. What kind of forehand grip did he have?
It wasn't good. Didn't he? He had a continental, right? He didn't have Eastern, correct?
I think he was Eastern, Steve.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he was Eastern. Yeah, Eastern forehand, continental backhand, hit mostly slice on that side. Big serve.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at that. But I thought he had a little play. I mean, it's like we rave about Welby Van Horn. I don't think anyone just presented tennis to beginners, but what Welby did back in the day, and there was a very strong influence throughout tennis because tennis was played with wooden rackets, and the 3 of the 4 Grand Slams were on grass, and by the second week, players were wearing spikes. Welby had what was called the beginner's grip and the championship grip. So what Welby did after his kids were, say, 14, 15, he changed them from an Eastern to a Continental because it was just go to the net, go to the net, go to the net. No, I thought that he had a little play on the forehand side, but I have to go back and look at that. What a great player, though. But he's somebody also, too, that back in the day, people did not hesitate to attack. Kill or be killed. You capitalize on the first opportunity to go forward.
Sure.
With, go ahead, Natalia.
No, the grips, again, going back to grips. So these days, we don't see many players with good grips, only very top man players like Tsitsipas and Zverev, they have good grips. Like if you look at juniors, they're so extreme these days. Like all so-called top juniors, a lot of kids of famous players, they on extreme grip.
Well, see, I think it definitely takes longer to learn Eastern grips, and people tend to have more success earlier with what I would call bad grips, anything from a semi-Western farther under, and that's why they like it. But unfortunately, to get real good, that's not what it's all about, because the game is played in 2 directions, not just one. You can go forward as well as side to side, and the grips cannot be overrated. It's just really sad to see. Nobody pays attention to it. No one knows what strokes are, and we're just going outside. It was too loud where we were.
It's very hard. It's very hard. Sorry, Kim. It's very hard to redo, especially when the kids get a little bit like older, like 13, 14. Very hard. So we have to deal with it every day. And Coach Steve.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And they don't understand. They don't understand the value of it, and they don't understand the value of going forward. And as soon as they have a little mediocre success with a Western grip, they're going, well, gee, I'm already good. What do I need to change this for? Right. Sure, it's a problem, and I mean the thing is to get them early and get them into changing grips. They used to take wooden rackets and cut them off and let the kid walk around with 1 through 3 on it and go learn your grip and come back. I mean, I'm sure Vic would probably have, if he taught a kid something and the kid didn't do it, he probably in the beginning of the lesson would have said, what did I teach you last week? And did you practice it? And if the kid didn't practice it, he'd probably would have sent him home. Nobody do that today.
No, actually, Brian Teacher, who played UCLA, he had a successful career, a great tennis player, and he went to Braden for the backhand, and he wanted it was a continental or composite. It was not Eastern. It was to the top side, not the bottom side.
Backhand.
On the forehand.
Oh.
And so Vic's thing was he'd have kids sign a release, and he'd say, I don't want to be responsible for that forehand. Is that you could sign a release? Is that I did not teach you that forehand?
But everyone look these days. They look at Federer. Oh, Federer, he looks so good. His forehand is so good, and they don't understand.
What kills me is their reference to old school. Okay, I'm definitely an old school coach, and I'll die an old school coach. And to me, an old school coach is someone that teaches all around tennis. And Federer was definitely taught. He was taught by an Australian, and old school tennis. And Rafa was not. Djokovic has very clean strokes, but now this thing when people take time off and try to come back, it may be very different, make it very difficult for him. I don't know, but yeah, grip.
Coming back to a few things on grips is, the jury's still out. The transition balls, red, yellow, green dot, great training tools, and I think you can have 18-year-olds, the older juniors practice with those balls, but
absolutely.
But that doesn't ensure that someone's going to have Eastern grips just because the ball's not bouncing as high. People need to be taught that expression. There's no substitute for a good beginning. And then what Natalia said, oh boy, the horse has been out of the barn. The kid's 13, 14 years old, and you're trying to make a grip change. It's so difficult. It's going to require some time. But something that we repeat often is go to YouTube, plug in Borg Federer comparison on the forehand side, and it looks identical. It's just very powerful, very, very powerful. But like what you said about Borg's grip, that's where with Vic Braden's library, it's kind of like with the Bryan brothers, they're so great for the game. And, in his library, there's film of him being coached by Vic at a young age. And they say, well, no, we just volley with a continental grip. But they have composite grips on the forehand side. So that's that old adage is that the top players don't say what they do or do what they say. That's like when you go to the jazz concert and you ask the saxophone player, how do you hit that note? They don't know. I mean, that does just because
they don't know. They don't know.
They don't know. They just do it.
They don't know.
It was taken down. It was on
right.
It was on YouTube for a long time. Malcolm Gladwell, who's written so many books, Outlier, I think maybe his most famous book of that. And he did some work with Vic, and Malcolm Gladwell was just blown away that top world-class tennis players could not articulate how they hit the ball.
Sure. Sure. Well, how many great football players make coaches?
Yeah. Now, we always say that a lot of times it's the backup quarterback who's wearing a headset, carrying a clipboard. He's standing right next to the head coach the whole time.
Sure. Sure. Where did Coach K play college basketball?
Yeah, he played at West Point, but
right.
Bobby Knight said that he didn't want him to shoot too much, but no, I mean Coach K. That's I would have loved to gone to his course. Maybe I don't know if he's retired. He's going to still do that. He's a course on leadership that people rave about. But no, the character coaching that gets off on a tangent. I think it's really character first. But tell us a little bit about different markets. You came back to the U.S. and Chicago indoor tennis. And then you were in Atlanta and then Houston. What about those markets?
It's Chicago's a very indoor oriented market, so it's it's tough. It's tough. It's really tough being a coach in America and finding a good environment. The best way to do it is to create your own, but it's hard to do. Chicago, there's a lot of tennis in Chicago, a lot of wealth. There are a lot of players come out of Chicago, but it's a tough environment to teach in. And Paul Mcdonald is by far, for sure, the best coach in Chicago.
How about
Paul?
We have to get Paul on the podcast. How about Atlanta?
Atlanta is there's a thing called Alta in Atlanta, and Alta dominates tennis in Atlanta. Alta is a team tennis team organization, and there are men's teams, there are women's teams, leagues. It's absolutely huge, and it's very, very good, very positive, and everybody that plays tennis in Atlanta is in it, and coaches are heavily involved in that. I was too, and you coach teams in the morning, adult teams, and it's just a fantastic thing. It would be a really good program to try to run throughout the whole country. I'm not sure why they haven't. They have, I'm not sure how many I think three or what is it? No, they have five doubles teams. Yeah, they play the same time every week. The season's kind of long. It's just a fantastic setup. Yeah, that really helps tennis in Atlanta.
I read an article a while ago that Georgia is the best state for tennis in the United States, considering the cost, the amount of courts, the programs.
Well, the neighborhoods all have courts, which is really good. Some of them, a lot of courts. I mean, they're neighborhoods with 10 or 12 courts. They're neighborhoods with two or four. A lot of private courts in the neighborhoods there, and then there are public facilities too. One of the best public facilities I know in the country, not from size, but from the facility itself, is a place called Bitsy Grant, who was a great player in the 40s, maybe even earlier. Clay and hardcourt. It's a public facility. It's real inexpensive to play there. It's in a big city park. There are probably 25 or 30 courts there. Just fantastic. They have tournaments all the time. I'm sure they have teaching programs going on, but that's one of the best programs, best facilities that I've ever seen. Spectacular. Yeah.
What about Houston?
Houston is also lots of tennis. The neat thing about Texas is that tennis in high school in Texas is year round. So if a kid is on the tennis team, they have a fall season and a spring season. So it really encourages a lot of recreation level players to try to play throughout the year if they're not playing violin, piano, drums, Boy Scout, snake hunting, belly dancing, and I don't know what else.
With going back to the top with Chicago, I think it's so nice for you to say that Paul Mcdonald is the best tennis coach in Chicago. I would say that, most knowledgeable, I think, he's an intellectual, I think, the background.
Yeah.
But then it comes down to the question, and that's not just for Paul, it's for anyone, are you really allowed to coach? And then all the circumstances with...
Great point, Steve. Yeah.
With an indoor staff, and, you sit in a meeting and there's 8 people and everyone's got a different agenda. And usually, no one ever talks about forehands and backhands. It's all about, money. And I understand that indoor tennis is 7,200 square feet of heated and lighted space. So I think Atlanta, I've taught quite a bit of tennis in Atlanta, just like I have in Chicago, just going to train coaches. But the Alta League, I couldn't believe when I first went there. It was as big as a telephone for a major city, a telephone book. But I was told at one point that it was one negative of tennis in Atlanta. It was almost too organized, where kids, they didn't really get exposed. They just played tennis in their neighborhood.
No, that's not true. The USTA, the tournament kids play from Atlanta, play all over the South.
Yeah.
And no, they're heavily involved in USTA tournament play and stuff. A lot of real good kids in Atlanta, and I just see Alta as really a huge plus, and it's a fantastic system because it motivates the people, like the camaraderie. The ladies are so into it. They have at least one organized practice a week for a couple hours. They normally get together another time. They do other things. It's really a driving force for adults in the Atlanta area, and it would be a good model to try to follow. Really,
I remember back it was in the '80s where you could put a $5 bill in a machine and a can of tennis balls and a Gatorade. Gatorade would come out, a pretty good sized bottle of Gatorade. One thing about Houston, you mentioned Texas. I think what you said about high school tennis, I know they dropped it at one point. My understanding is they brought it back, where they now play mixed doubles, and it is year round. And also, too, that at the major high schools, the kids meet the last period with a full-time tennis coach.
Okay. Well, the reality of it is you were right, except for the last part.
Yeah.
Most of the coaches are high school teachers that don't have tennis background, so their knowledge is limited. It's not their fault. That's just the way it is. And I don't know. I just had coached a boy that was won his high school level double state champion. I had another girl who got to the final of the regional in Houston in singles. And by the way, I changed her grips from full Western to Eastern 3 years ago, and she's going to a major college in New Orleans on a tennis scholarship. And she did change her grips 3 years ago. I told her flat out and her parents it wasn't going to work. And, her name's Avery. Kudos to Avery. And yeah, that's where we are.
No, it's sad that high school tennis is not where it used to be. It used to be everybody used to play.
Now, if you play high school tennis, it means you're not good.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, sad. That's the expression where the individuals become bigger than the program. It's too bad.
Well, it's high school tennis is a real plus in Texas for tennis. The coaching is normally not very good, if at all, and the kids have private lessons other places. But it is kind of a driving force for tennis here, more so than the USTA. I mean, the kids that get much better a lot of the time step out of it. I had a couple kids that were real good that didn't play in their high school teams because they wouldn't have benefited from it. But it's a really, really good thing. And I don't know any other states in the country that have year-round high school tennis. So,
Kim, come back to homeschool. So you're a big fan of homeschool. Tell us about that.
Because you want to give your kids opportunity. School is an opportunity. How many kids are going to make it in tennis? A year and a half ago, how I'm going to ask my wife, how long ago did Tatiana fire me? A year and a number 2 12-year-old in Texas, started homeschooling, then went to a famous academy in Texas on a scholarship, and is a wonderful player and kid, and is homeschooled. And school's going to be difficult, to go to college and stuff. Hey, if you're a top college player, Daniela Collins is a great example of what you can do. You don't need to do homeschool. I mean, Daniela wasn't homeschooled, was she?
To my knowledge, no.
I don't think she could have gone to University of Virginia if she had been homeschooled. Give your kid opportunities, and college is an opportunity. It's not a negative. If you're that good, you're going to do well, and you're going to look at on the guy side. Who do we have? Mcdonald, isn't it? Mcdonald, yeah. And there are 2 or 3 other players that all went to college that are doing great. I mean, Isner went to college. Holy cow, that was a long time ago. But
I do think that I think that parents should be not taking the path of trying to really fast track and have early success. The teenage sensation. Be better off to be the late bloomer, but at the same time, you still have to get up and make the best of every day and work really hard and
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think you have to make or break it by the time you're 17, 18 years old.
No. And I mean, Steve, the thing about the hours, the 8 to 10,000 hours. Hey, if you can be a top player and have played, I really believe 7 or 8,000 hours, not 10. And if you're going to school full time, you can do that. You could maybe even do the 10,000 hours.
Well, especially if you're well taught.
Yes, absolutely.
If you have good grips.
If you have good grips, right, and you're going deep into tournaments in the weekend, you're getting your hours in. You get a couple hours in every day, or almost every day, and then on the weekends you're getting your 8 to 10 hours in, or something, or more. you've got it. You've got it.
Well, it is true that these kids around the U.S. that are practicing twice a day without any systematic, organized plan, they're getting better on quantity, but there generally is a ceiling on how good they'll be because they have a hole in their game, maybe multiple holes. We're always telling people, if you got a hole in your boat, you're not going to put the sail up. You got to fix the hole in your boat. But a lot of times, people don't know what holes they have in their game until they're way down the road.
Sure. Or go ahead, Natalia, please.
I have a question. So going back, I want to ask your opinion. So going back to college tennis, so the difference between American players and European players, that European, they consider tennis like Eastern European, they're going to go 100% in. So if they don't even consider playing college these days in the United States. And here the kids, college is an option. Don't you think sometimes it makes it for tennis players harder to be very good tennis player, because a lot of juniors, they consider tennis as a tool to get in a good college and to get a scholarship, and that's over. Then they get they become doctors and engineers, and tennis is gone.
Well,
we have a
that's
lot
awesome.
of Indian kids, they do school more than tennis, and they're tennis players. The Europeans, they have different mentality. So what do you think about this?
But Natalia, I have never, including Dustin, never told anybody I want you to become a tour level player or I want you to become a pro. If that happens along the way, I really don't think it should be a goal for anybody. I think you go to school, you work at your sport. If you get that good, great. But how many people today are making a living playing tennis? 100 on the men's side and maybe 100 on the women's. If you're not top 100, you're not making money. You're spending money, and that, to me, you think about how many jobs there are in the world, and to tell your kid you're going to be one of the top 100 in that field. That's pretty tough. That's pretty tough. I wouldn't want that for anybody. My own children, the older two, were quite good players. My son could have played in college. None of my kids played in college. They all went and studied instead. And I wish they had, but they didn't. But I'm very happy that they didn't. If you can follow that, it's just 1 out of 100. There are so many people. What are there, Steve? 5,000 or 10,000 kids on the men's and women's side that think they're going to become top players. And how many spots are there?
I think Roger Federer's father had it right when he said, well, if you're not in the top 70 in the world after 3 years, it does depend on what country you're from. It's like Nishikori, I guess, makes more money than Nadal. That, where years ago, that was one of the problems with German players before Boris Becker, is they had such a great life in wealthy Germany. Is years ago, a lot of the Germans didn't go on the road.
Sure.
That was one of the things that helped the Australians, that they'd be so far away from home, or that they didn't go home. But I do think a case study, it's individual by individual. And one of the sad things, we see it all the time, is, and that's where we have a curriculum, we call it GreatBase, is how can you argue with having a great base? And it really should be for kids that are 6, 7, 8 years old. They could play a number of sports, but develop a solid foundation for hitting a tennis ball. Because a lot of times when a kid finally says, hey, I really like tennis, I'd like to play in college, but they're already 14 or 15 years old. And then, they don't
have good grips. They can't run. They can do push-up.
They can't. They haven't been exposed. I think to sport in general, I think everybody could go back and just plug it in on YouTube. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, just JFK, physical fitness, and how people worked in a fitness class in the 60s.
Yes.
And, it's wake up and smell the coffee. So if kids can't catch and they can't throw, I mean, it's the parents need to evaluate how much time they're on a computer. And so I do think that sometimes kids are so far behind. I mean, tennis is a vehicle. I do think that the classroom is a kid's workplace. But if a kid started, I'd be in agreement with you. If kids started really early playing a number of sports and they started with a really rock solid tennis foundation, that they could be a regular schooler. I mean, even a hybrid where they're going to take, they take English, math, and science, and then they do the other classes on their own. But no, I mean, there's no accountability for these kids at all these so-called academies across America that are training.
Oh, sure.
That are training twice a day.
Well, they encourage kids not to go to school, and it's wrong. I mean, they're encouraging so that it's an economic thing. So they make more money. They're encouraging kids, don't go to school. You can be in our academy all day. Okay, and then their future is messed up.
Yeah.
With
but then also too is if someone has gone, say that they've gone through all of elementary school and regular school. But I mean, when you have kids that are in the elementary grades that are not going to school and learning cooperative skills and such, I mean, in many ways, I liked it back. When you and I first came into tennis, people took private lessons. Everybody was on a level playing field. They got out of school at 3, and like you said, and I like how you say that, did they work their sport? And but also too is that we're just trying to microwave everything and instant coffee, where years ago, and we've preached this on these podcasts, that like Stan Smith and Arthur Ashe, they both win Wimbledon, they both win the U.S. Open, and when they went to college as freshmen, they couldn't play. It was called a developmental year. Kids there were just rules. Kids, they couldn't have, as a freshman, you couldn't have a car, you couldn't live off campus, and we're just too loosey-goosey, and we've lost our discipline, we've lost our way.
Sure. Absolutely. Too soft. The whole thing is, American kids are very different than they were 40 years ago. And it's not good.
Well, I think
it's definitely not good.
Bobby Knight says it quite well, is that the parents are different. Kids
right. I read that last week. Yep.
Yeah. Kids are still kids, but the times have changed.
Yep. Or many hours, the parents have to devote to the kids, driving them all over.
Sure. I mean, how much did your parents didn't drive you all over? I mean, maybe to hockey, and that was it, right?
I can remember running cross country. I played a little pee-wee football, but I was very small. My older brother said, "Hey, run cross country to get in shape." And I was running in a race. Now, I was ranked in the top 10 in New England, but it was just in the private school sector. It wasn't public schools. So it was really very overrated. And basically, to be ranked, you just have to have one good time. It's not like you have to be consistent. Anyway, the story is my mother shows up, and my parents, there was no GPS. They were late, parents' weekend. And I had already finished. And there was, like 300 runners in the race, and they keep coming in. And my mother asked the question, it's just like cross-country skiing where they don't all start at the same time. And the reason I tell that story is that my parents had never watched me run a race. It's like now, I mean, we have parents that watch practice. And it's like, I can see watch a few minutes, but, don't you?
My son runs, and we don't go to his meets. He goes with his team.
It's kind of like in Ireland where the bartender says at the end of the night, don't you people have homes to go to? And, don't you have something to go do besides watch practice? I know you have to make sure that your kid's in a safe environment and it's productive, but.
I have to throw one tidbit out there and interrupt you, Steve. I had one of the kids I was talking about this week who does 10 different things, also ran cross country this year. And he ran in a meet and got lost in the woods. I'm serious. They had to send a team in to go find him.
With cross country, that's a great character builder. Makes water taste better. I think every kid should run cross country. I mean,
my wife did.
That's one thing.
My wife did also.
Yeah, it's one. It's one thing. fitness coaches will, they say, well, no, you don't want to run any distance. It's bad for you. I mean, come on, go run 3 miles. It's not bad for you. With that, slow twitch and fast twitch. And most kids, like Natalia saying, they can't do a push-up. Let me ask about, I saw this, that you coached Horst Goff, who died at such a young age, the Austrian, got to be 18 in the world. What was it like to work with him?
Very chaotic. A great player, had some top wins. He
especially in Davis.
I coached him once in the German Open, and I told him to play Stiech's forehand. He said this was the year after Stich won Wimbledon, and he said, why do you want me to play his forehand? I said, because he has a composite grip. He's much better on the backhand side. He said, I said, just pound balls into his forehand. He played his forehand until 5 and was up 5-2 in the first set and hit a short ball. And of course, Stich, Wimbledon champion, comes up and creams the short ball. And then he turns and says to me, what kind of a strategy is this? I said, Horst, just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. He didn't and lost. But the Horst was very chaotic, very similar to Dustin in that respect. Would play real hard, but off the court, too many things going on. A great guy, but off the court, there were just too many distractions.
How about Wesley Whitehouse, junior Wimbledon champion?
Wesley, also a great kid, a great player. Had how can I say this? Had some demons from the past, and it was hard to, if your support staff, especially from home, your support crew isn't being positive all the time, it's real hard to move on. And Wesley had some success on the tour too. He got to I think the final in Indianapolis against James Blake, and lost in a tie break. But Wesley's a policeman in New Zealand now, and I'm sure he's very happy there. But great attacking player, lefty, big serve, big slice serve, pretty scary. Could play pretty scary. So very complete player.
Oh, he won Junior Wimbledon, and he was in 2 other Grand Slam finals.
Yes.
Let's wrap it up here with a few more questions. I know you got to go pack some suitcases. Are you shipping a lot of things to Italy?
We shipped an entire container in a car, and it's actually leaving the port of Houston on Saturday.
Is it an MG?
And
is it MG?
Yes, my MG is in it.
No kidding. With I remember Craig Tiley and Ross Brown, South African Englishmen. They bought a MG. It was in my driveway forever, and it never ran. They never drove it for 100 years.
I drove it in Germany. I remember
you came to interview coaches, and you bought it. I remember that.
Yeah, I paid Craig Tiley $800 for it, which was too much. I think he owes me at least $300. Great success story, Craig Tiley, and I know that he learned a lot from you, Steve, and I know that Craig was your student for many, many years, and he's had tremendous success and has really, really helped Australian tennis and has done a great job.
Yeah, he's done so many things, but he couldn't get that MG going.
I did.
Go ahead, Natalia.
Are you going to teach tennis in Italy?
Well, I may coach some traveling kids in Europe. I may get back to you guys about that. We've talked about that.
We're coming to you.
No, you need to.
We're coming.
With Natalia's daughter, she needs to have someone take her around Europe who knows Europe. She's very young, but she's on her way to be a great tennis player. with. No, we could certainly help you out with that. We have quite a large network. If you and Jennifer, you get there, you get settled, and you want
we
put some packages together, we could do that.
Yeah, that's real interesting, and we maybe as of the fall, and maybe work with some kids on and off. I'd love to do that, and that's real exciting, and we'll have a fantastic home, and we're real excited about it, and the weather and the food and the people and the family also.
Have you been studying a little Italian?
My wife, to be honest with you, I did for a while, and I haven't for several months, and my wife has been quite diligent the last several months and is ahead of me. But believe it or not, I think the German knowledge is going to help me a lot. There's a lot of vocabulary and a lot of stuff that you pick up, and having learned German is definitely going to help me. So,
well, definitely the experience going way back when you couldn't speak German. I think that's an exercise or an experience that is fascinating, where you're out there and there were so many lessons for our students that we would say, okay, see if you can give a lesson with just using one word or one phrase, because many times we make these technical take-home tapes, and it's very verbose, but unfortunately you have to fight ignorance. People say, what do you do for a living? I say, I fight ignorance every day. Is that we have to be very, very persuasive in telling people that the tennis court's a rectangle and water runs uphill, not downhill. Instead of just saying, hey, why don't you have this little circular swing so you can hit this circular spin? But go ahead, one more question, Natalia. We'll wrap it up.
So I think you need to learn some Italian music.
Absolutely.
Italian movies. So the culture is very rich, and it's amazing.
Absolutely. We're so excited about it, and we're terribly excited about the whole thing. And learning Italian is a big part of it. You can't understand fully a society and culture if you don't speak the language. You cannot. It doesn't matter what goes on, and we're committed to that, and we will. So,
which part of Italy are you gonna be?
The best part, Sicily.
Wow.
Yeah, very close to the Mediterranean, in a really spectacularly beautiful town. Not very, very close to Palermo, and which is a fascinating city in itself. Sicily is definitely one of the gems of the world that people have not yet discovered, and it's really like California in 1920, and
but it's not going to be developed.
But it's not going to be developed like that because they don't allow it, and that's all good. So, the best of the best. So please tell your friends to go to Cancun.
Well, Jennifer,
except for you guys.
Yeah.
Except for you guys. Right.
But no, really appreciate it, because you're down to the wire. You're leaving in just a few days. Appreciate both of you taking the time to help us out. We're trying to give tennis value to our listeners. I'm sure people will thoroughly enjoy this time that we've had talking to you.
Yeah, good luck in your new chapter, and enjoy.
Well, yeah. Thanks so much for your time, and I hope to see your daughter.
Yeah, we will definitely come. We'll stop by. We love Italian. We're Russian, very similar, very loud and very energetic. So,
sure.
Kim, I remember working with you, and there was some kids at All American Sports from Italy, and we were not allowed to work with them outside of camp hours. And I can remember I broke the rule, and I was helping this one boy from Italy. And I remember the gentleman, Sace Maharaj. I struggled with mentioning Jiwan's name correctly the other day, Jiwan Maharaj. Sace made every Friday at this boarding camp, there would be a dance. And I remember my punishment was for hitting outside of camp hours with one of the juniors. This kid from Italy, he would just say, "Why?" That's all he could say is "Why?" And I had to dance with every girl at the camp. Another time, you and I were late for a meeting, And we both needed to learn to keep our mouth shut. We were late, and this doesn't happen. We were paid absolutely peanuts, and we were.
It was like $110 a week or something like that.
You and I show up just a few minutes late. We're running from the tennis courts, and we get fined $10 for being late for this meeting. And I can remember.
Yeah, he pocketed it for sure.
And I remember saying, we were late, but we were straight, because there was this thing called Miracle Hooney, and there's a few coaches that were smiling throughout the whole camp. But
yeah, sure. I can think of a couple.
But that was it was great to meet you going way back 44 years ago. But you and Jennifer, thanks for your time, and we'll stay in touch, and we'll see you in Italy.
Thank you.
Italy,
Great to talk to both of you. Thank you so much.
All right. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Safe travels.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.
Bye. All right, Natalia. How about a takeaway from that? That was fun for me. Go back, Kim Wittenberg. You know someone that well. As I said to start the show off, you can just take 1 minute and just catch up instantly. But he knows tennis, and he's speaking from the heart when he talks about how poorly the game is taught today. It's really sad. But go ahead, one takeaway, and we'll sign off here.
I was great.
It's just great.
Yes.
I think with with grips, it was just great to hear that term. Just grips. Monica Seles, the great title for his book is "Get a Grip." I tell kids, this is a grip for a lifetime. But anyway, listeners, I hope you got a lot out of it. Thank you very much. Episode 89, Climbing Towards 100, is in the books.
Thank you.
Adios, amigos. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Natalia.